The attorneys will now take a few questions.
David, quick question. Can you explain briefly how this case came about? It's found these particular plaintiffs or how they got viewed. And I guess you describe it sort of an odd couple for being involved in this case together. How did that union come about?
I'll address part, and I think Ted will address part. First, as Ted said, this is not a question of Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. Ted and I, as everybody knows, have been on different sides in important political issues. We come from different parts of the political spectrum. But I think Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, and liberals all recognize the importance of the equal rights guaranteed by the Constitution. This is not something that is a partisan issue. This is something that is a civil rights issue, a legal issue. And I think that is what has brought us together. Ted and I, good friends. We have worked together as well as on opposite sides. And when he got involved in this, he called me to ask me to be involved. And I was delighted with the opportunity to do that. And I'll let him address how the first part of it started.
David and I share many values. We may vote differently from time to time, but we've spent a lot of time together and we've talked about things that matter to us as Americans. We agree more often than we disagree. When I was first approached about this case, I felt that it was very important that we present the American people and the courts a unified front and tell the courts and the American people through our presence and our participation that this is not about right or left or partisan politics. This is about what we'd all share as Americans. The other thing that David and I share is a passionate desire to be successful when we go to court. And I can't think of a way to succeed with this case that's better capable of doing that than to have David Boies on the team. How did the plaintiffs come to us? I was contacted many, many months ago about whether I would be willing to participate in this legal challenge through Chad and his organization, this wonderful organization that he's created. And the individuals who you see before us are individuals who came to us expressing a profound desire to be married. As you heard from Chad, they've been in personal relationships for a long time. They feel that they've been denied the right, and we want to help them achieve that.
What's at stake here if you fail? Does that further codify or solidify marriage discrimination?
The question was asked what would happen if we fail. In the first place, we don't intend to have that happen. We believe that the courts are ready to grant equality to citizens based upon sexual orientation and are going to be sensitive to the fact, as David said eloquently, that for too many decades, for centuries really, individuals in this country, sadly, have been the brunt of discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. On the other hand, we recognize the reality that no one can predict the outcome of any case. We're confident about this case, but civil rights have been won by individuals, whether they involve race or sex or other issues, by bringing the case to the American people and to the courts. And every time that people do that is a step forward, even if there might be small defeats along the way, or even important defeats along the way, because ultimately the American people and the courts of this country come to the right conclusion, and we're confident that that will happen.
Sir, do you think there might be a problem with getting the federal court to hear this case since it's dealing with the California Constitution?
Well, this is a case that challenges the status of individuals in California who wish to marry under the rights granted to them by the federal Constitution, the United States Constitution, the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. The California Supreme Court yesterday said that California could amend its Constitution, but the decision yesterday was purely a matter of state law. In fact, as I think David might point out, the court went very far to point out that this was simply a decision about California law and the California Constitution. It did not in any way suggest that these individuals or the plaintiffs who might seek rights under the federal Constitution would be affected by that decision.
I think that's exactly right. And the United States Supreme Court has held in a number of cases and consistently held that the United States Constitution is supreme, that if a right is guaranteed by the United States Constitution, no state, not by state law, not by state constitution, can infringe that right. And the California Supreme Court was very clear in its opinion that it was simply holding that California had amended its Constitution. It was not deciding whether that amendment of the Constitution under state law was constitutional under federal law. And that is the issue that the federal courts will test.
Sir, what about the understanding that states are responsible for defining marriage in their own state, if you will? So what's to stop the federal court or the Supreme Court from saying, take it back to your own backyard, we have nothing to do with that?
The United States Supreme Court, from 1967 forward, has made crystal clear that marriage is a fundamental right guaranteed by the federal Constitution, that it cannot be infringed by the states. There is no proposition of law that says that marriage is exclusively to be determined by the states, that they can discriminate against people in terms of race, in terms of sex, in terms of sexual orientation, because of the way the state law goes. The federal Constitution is designed to prevent states from discriminating among their citizens. And that is what this case is about. And as I say, for more than 40 years, the United States Supreme Court has been crystal clear that marriage is a fundamental right of every human being and that states cannot discriminate based on policies that do not have an important state interest in terms of who they allow to be married and under what circumstances. And the court has even held that a state can't prevent prisoners from getting married. There have been numerous decisions by the United States Supreme Court that marriage is a fundamental right guaranteed by the federal Constitution.
So do you believe that these new round of ballot initiatives that are currently in works should not even go before the people of California, or should they be put on hold?
I don't have a view on that. This lawsuit is designed simply to establish a matter of federal constitutional law. In terms of would I have preferred that Proposition 8 didn't pass? Of course I would have. Would I prefer that it didn't exist? Of course I would have. But this is not a question of state law. This is a question of federal constitutional law.
And I might add with respect to that to the extent that people want to bring the issue back before the California voters and hope that they will change their mind next time, that's fine. I mean, and to the extent that is happening in other states, that simply keeps the issue before the people, and to the extent that progress can be made in that fashion, that's fine too. But in the meantime, these individuals who are being denied their constitutional rights have a right to have those rights vindicated now.
Do either of you have a family member or a friend who was gay? Did that impact your decision to pursue this case?
I'm sorry.
Do either of you have a family member or a friend who was gay? You know somebody personally in your circle. Did that impact your decision?
I will say that I'll let David speak for himself, but I suspect that there is not a single person in this room that doesn't have a family member or a friend or a close acquaintance or a professional colleague, and many of them who are gay. And if you look into the eyes and hearts of people who are gay and talk to them about this issue, that reinforces in the most powerful way possible the fact that these individuals deserve to be treated equally like the rest of us and not be denied the fundamental rights of our Constitution.
I couldn't have said it better.